Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of jbiztechvalley.com and Statewide News Service.
Well, thank you, Rabbi, and I got to tell you, we have one of the most savvy elected officials in the State Assembly with us today, Assemblyman Peter Lopez.
You're very generous. Both of you are very generous.
Welcome to the show.
But I love coming to your show.
Okay.
You're generous and fun.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what's coming up in the new legislative session that's of a highlight for you and that you'd like to see brought up as issues?
Well, certainly as we move forward, we've had an onslaught of issues. Much of it is things that have been beyond our control with the recession and all the budgetary challenges. And then we've had all the natural disasters between Sandy and Lee and Irene. Certainly we've had a lot of things brought to our doorstep that have put us really in a reactionary mode. And I feel for a change. We're now at a point where the budget is stabilized. We have opportunity to advance policies. We now have some changes in Albany that I think will be a healthy mix and allow for more balance in policies across the state. So I look at education, which still is an issue that's very near and dear to all of us. Educating our young people and getting them ready for the outside world. What a critical mission. So that area still is very much in flux. Wasn't a free fall for a long time.
But one of the things that they say there's $5 billion extra. That's not too big of a
everyone
problem.
asks me about that.
You know,
I
that's
get
not
that
such
one
a
all
problem.
the
I
time.
wish
$5
I'd
billion,
have
it's an attention getter.
But I don't want to interrupt your role with the education and what else you see as your. I'm going to take notes as you talk. So
Well, we'll go education, then I'll go back to $5 billion.
I'll come back to some.
How's that?
I'll come back to some of these things. Yeah,
Sure,
okay.
sure. Well, on the education piece, again, many of our schools, and it's as much inner city and rural as it is any school in the state, but many of them have been struggling economically. And the challenge is we want quality education for every child. We want every one of them to have the opportunity to be productive citizens. But with lack of technology, lack of stable funding, the inequities between schools, it puts many schools at risk, and many students have been at risk. So up until now, the funding has been an issue. We have the tax cap, which puts limitations on how much schools can levy, public schools, from their tax base.
Yeah, but the tax cap is not really a 2% tax cap because there are many segments to the budget, and this is only on one segment, the 2%. So it's not really on the 2% on the overall budget. Let's be real about this.
Yeah, I would say for schools, of all the institutions that are affected by the cap, not to get into it in too much detail, but when the cap was put in place, the premise was to try to limit the ability of local government, schools, counties to reach to the property tax for their revenue. And in this case, and subject to a budget vote, if in fact the budgets don't pass, they don't stay within the parameters of the cap. So yes, it does float and there are variable numbers, but the premise is intended to constrain access to property tax dollars. So that added to the mix of issues with Common Core, added to the issues of funding challenges through the deficit. Schools have really been in free fall. And again, in the mix we have private schools, charter schools, all those issues coming to bear. And it's made education a critical issue, and one that I expect will still command center stage as we move into the next session. Beyond that, one thing that has been neglected for a long time has been the premise of really focusing on economic development. And we've had some efforts with the Startup New York. Again, things tend to be glitzy and glamorous. And Startup New York, we've had they call it Red Sea, the consolidated funding application process, but with the regional councils. But I really feel that we need to bear down on that because through the recession, again, many people are just hanging on. They're concerned about can they heat their homes, can they feed their children, can they recover from floods. People have been really on the defensive, and I think it's time to move things forward.
Well, I mean, I guess, Mark, I think it dovetails with my question of
We're back to $5 billion. I knew we'd be
think
back.
about them, $5 billion. No, but really, I mean, you bring up big issues, but nothing that money can't cure.
Well,
You know, education.
but
So
it's
the five-
5 billion reasons and 5 billion ways to spend the $5 billion.
Well,
You guys are
And-
fun. I like this.
So
the
they're-
overarching thing about the 5 billion, but this sets the tone for the use of it, is it's a one time. It's a windfall,
One
a
shot.
one time. Right. So the question is, what is the best way of using $5
if you
billion
use it all
that
this
doesn't
year,
regenerate?
you're not going to get it. Next
Right,
year, you're going
right.
to be in the hole.
So many have advocated back to education. Well, put it into education. Well, okay, you can, but what will that $5 billion do for this year, knowing that you won't have that same money to use again next year? So folks have been advocating. We just had this discussion in Otsego County. It was with their Chamber of Commerce at a legislative forum. And, well, let's think about infrastructure. Let's think about roads and bridges. Let's think about
'Cause that's a
broadband.
one-time.
Let's think about
deal. Once it's fixed, it's
broadband
fixed.
access for underserved areas. How about looking at ways where we can use that money and make an investment that has a continued benefit?
Something that doesn't have recurring costs. to it.
Doesn't necessarily, and where we may
Yeah, it
be,
does not.
where there may be a situation of neglect
Right.
that we can counter. So if you have bridges that are weight posted or roads that are deficient, or in this case, underserved areas where they don't have access to internet or cell coverage, are there some opportunities? And as we do that, we build capacity and we give people a chance to be contributing members of society. So I think there are a lot of options, and there's always the prospect of paying off debt.
Yeah.
You can always pay some debt off with that. That's not a bad idea either.
Right.
Even going to step one, I don't even know,
So what
maybe our viewers don't, how did they, New York State, what they're always, you say in Yiddish, kvetching, like, oy vey, there's not enough money. All of a sudden they came up with the 5 billion. I mean, I've always heard that, that's why I'm asking
Right.
you.
Now, the $5
But-
billion was the result of a court case, correct?
Most of it
Most
was
of it.
from a court case, I think, with tobacco, and the governor shared it with the attorney general,
Right.
and they, got, so this
It's
is
a
part of it.
one-time job.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
one
so-
time, it's not
so-
because of fiscal prudence.
Oh,
Right, so if we're on the monopoly board and we land on some event
Yeah.
and you
It's
have
a
a,
one-time deal.
it's a one-time deal, exactly. So what would be on your list?
How about the Chabad house over here?
No, you have tuition income tax credit.
Yeah.
True, that's true too.
And
But again,
help
that's
with the
a recurring
private
question.
schools,
You spend that for 1 year, he's saying, so what are you going to do to year 2?
That's the
Now you
challenge.
don't
Well,
have
it's
the
a credit.
$5 billion.
It's a credit. So, you adjust the budget. Once you find out the first year how much it's going to cost, the outgoing years, you just sort of adjust the budget accordingly.
See, I should come back. You guys are like a policy think tank.
That's right.
I like this. This is fun.
So that's what they do.
Yeah, so back on
right.
mainstream issues.
Well,
Again, I
that-
expect
as-
education, you're right, the $5 billion
Right.
windfall,
Yeah.
that'll be front and center.
Economic development.
Economic development, I would expect that to be front and center.
And-
And again, in terms of other issues, boy, some of these pop out of left field. We had any number of issues that surfaced because what I've seen is as the deficit has stabilized, there's been more focus on social issues as well. So last year they had legalization of marijuana that popped out of left field. You know what I mean? It was so the governor's state of the state, which has been postponed,
Right.
understandably, due to the
Yeah.
loss of the Cuomo household, invariably has any number of surprises. So some things remain the same, but I expect he'll have a few surprises.
You know what?
for us.
But every year, I mean, we'll just let the audience know that pretty much 98% of what the governor proposes,
At
the
State of
legislature.
Union.
No, in the budget. The budget is, the legislature disposes on 98%. They really just tweak it around the edges, that
True.
2%.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, of the budget, of this
Right.
overall massive budget,
Right.
which people would, we're like larger than most, our budget's larger than most countries. We're the 9th largest economic power in the country, in the world. And, that's just something that's just
Yeah, it is
famine,
staggering.
Yeah.
What are we up to? 130, 140 billion, somewhere around there.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, that doesn't
And
include-
considering when Mario Cuomo was governor, it was 50 million.
right. True.
That's
really?
it.
Wow.
Yeah, and he, so,
Yeah, so I think that'll be a big piece of it, and ultimately I expect the governor will have. He likes to throw things in. He likes to experiment, and he'll take
Right.
things and repackage. We've heard from our higher education institutions that they are looking for some support, capital budgets, particularly with the SUNY institutions. They're looking for investment on their capital budgets. So There'll be a heavy emphasis on the budget. Some groups feel that they need to gain ground from previous cuts and shortfalls. So we'll be tested there to see what makes sense and what's possible.
Okay, so I want to ask you, in your district.
You are taking notes. Look at you. You're
Yeah,
good. You're very
in
deliberate.
your district, you had an issue about the streams.
Yes.
And how the streams needed to be changed and sort of not as straight and changed and
What's the issue?
because
I
of
don't even understand.
Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Lee,
So they
that
won't
they
flood,
had,
so it'll
that,
prevent flooding?
that it'll prevent flooding,
Right.
and the streams are just not built to handle the amount of water that they have right now. And, you were making some progress on it. Can some of this $5 billion, because it would be a one-shot.
That's a good point.
Be used for your stream?
That's a good
What do you
point.
call it, stream
Yeah, stream stabilization,
Yeah,
we would
okay.
use the term. Some use the term naturalization. And the premise, Rabbi, is that through development and development pressures primarily, the development in floodplains, less absorptive areas, swamps and marshes filled in, more impervious surface, stormwater and waters from natural events run into our very narrow valleys and have tremendous devastating power. And so Irene and Lee were quintessential examples of that. We had 18 inches of rain in one day, and it was catastrophic,
Right.
the impact it had. So the premise is, should we, really I feel we must, look at ways of building and redeveloping to make our communities more storm resistant.
Right, so it's not just putting more rocks in the bed. I mean, it's building, you want to dredge it further? You want deeper streams?
In some cases, you may be creating places for water to take the energy out of the streams. You may be creating more floodplain.
You want to
or
maybe
absorptive
have it
areas.
more windy?
You may have
Does
it
that
more
help?
windy, sure.
That helps, right?
You may want to have more vegetation. You may want to change where and to what extent and how people build in these areas. So that's an ongoing dialogue. I can tell you, still a quarter of my calls in the district are still flood recovery. People are very emotional.
Sure.
And many are folks who've fallen through the
It's
cracks.
been a
So-
few years, and really.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah,
this,
so
this
yeah,
was
so-
before Hurricane Sandy,
So
and
Still hasn't
Oh,
corrected.
still, no.
Queens and Staten Island are still not back to
Really?
normal
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
Sure.
So we have
Yeah.
people, we still have homes and businesses that are dark. We have people who are still suffering.
Right,
And there's an emotional piece about what do we do for the futures.
right.
So in my district, Common Core, SAFE Act, hydrofracking, power lines, pipelines,
right.
proposed. We had 3 proposed power lines in the Hudson Valley. We had
Mhm.
2 proposed gas pipelines in my region. The list goes on. So,
Mhm.
so
So what, now, we had the casino issue.
Yeah.
And we had the determination
Yes,
that it went
yes.
to Schenectady.
right,
There was a place in Schoharie County in House Cave
right,
where there was a proposal.
right.
Are you disappointed, or are you relieved that, you're not going to have this, where people could still gamble and go to Schenectady
Yeah, I
from
can tell you,
Schoharie
I'm
County?
not a fan of gambling, but those of us who looked at this objectively realized the governor's premise was economic development. I don't know if I would call it economic development. I would call it stopping economic leakage. Certainly, we have people who are leaving the state and region and heading out of state to spend their dollars for gambling and tourism. So the premise was to try to maximize and bring people to the region. So for Schoharie County, my home county, much like Northern Appalachia, the prospect of creating up to 1,000 jobs and having the economic multiplier effect of the facility, coupling it with Howe Caverns and the visits to the caves, coupling it with an indoor water park, all those things, I would say the community as a whole really came to embrace. Even those who don't support gambling and who may have been opposed understood the logic and the rationale of trying to jumpstart and prime the pump.
But are you, have you
So I'm
spoken?
disappointed.
Have you spoken to the owner of House
We-
Cave
we worked
about
very,
this?
we worked very closely with them.
And what was, I don't even know his name now. I forgot his name, but
There were 2 owners, yeah.
okay. Have you? Are they disappointed? Was
Yeah,
it a lot of?
they were.
Was it a lot of money out of their pocket?
I would say they were disappointed. There was a fair amount of money out of pocket, and there was a lot of emotional capital. I
Yeah.
think that's the best way to describe it. People who were advocating and pushing put their heart and soul into the proposal, worked hard to lobby for it, and
Did you feel it was a fair process? Could it have been more transparent?
I would say it could have been more transparent. And to be honest, as I sat there, as they were making the announcements, many of the awards that they were making, as they highlighted the awards, the casinos that were
Right.
approved, the casino sounded much like what was being proposed in Schoharie County. So we were, as we listened, we were more and more excited. We're getting to our region, they go through one region, the next region, and the awardees are, and for this reason and that reason. We thought, wow, this sounds just like the Howe
You know
Cameron's
what, can
proposal.
I ask maybe a naive question? I asked about casinos and it
Yes.
made in Schenectady.
Yes.
Says, well, it's not just a casino, but it's a fun park for the children, and it's
Yeah.
this and that. It's
a
really
hotel.
not just.
Right.
So
Right.
why can't someone build something up in Advocate in Howe's Cavern so you won't have a casino? I mean, how much, maybe you're going to tell me 50% of the revenue is casino. That could be the answer.
Yeah.
But if you make a fun park like you're saying,
Still-
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, those
Well,
were-
why can't you, some entrepreneur make a fun park so
Absolutely.
you won't have a casino? You're allowed to make a.
Absolutely, a very valid question. And actually, those things were in process. And working with one of my colleagues, Senator Seward, we had actually secured $4 million to run water and sewer from the village of Cobleskill, some 10 miles away, to the Howe Cavern site. And the whole premise was not just for Howe Caverns and its expansion, water park and other proposed improvements, but also to open up a major state route running parallel to interstate and provide some opportunity for growth along that corridor. So yes, you're right. The casino only became part of the package when it was announced by the governor, recognizing that things were already in motion for other improvements. So my hope would be we can go back and revisit. I think people were crestfallen, they were wounded because they worked so hard on it. And again, it was a very thoughtful proposal. And the process itself was a bit murky.
The mayor of Rensselaer is asking for full accounting as to why, and to see why their site was not chosen.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if the owners of Howe Caverns are joining with the Rensselaer mayor in his quest, because more voices speak, the more
Good
voice you
point.
have.
I haven't had that conversation with the owners, and truthfully, after the announcement, we've had some conversation, but I think the holidays kicked in, and,
Yeah.
and
So maybe
we're
that's something
just
we could
coming back.
revisit, because the mayor of Rensselaer is fit to be tied.
Sure, there was quite an emotional outburst from the southern tier, and again, regionally, they had 3 regions that were in play, so to speak, with up to 4 casinos that could be selected, and the southern tier felt that it had been misled. Right? Dissed, yeah, that's the best way. And so,
Well, not just that, but with hydrofracking also.
sure.
Twice in one day.
So I would say that the immediate follow-up was pressure on the administration to name the 4th casino and place it in the southern tier. And I think that's in motion right now.
Well, Orange County,
Yeah.
also has been
True.
fit to be tied, because they had, 3 casino
Yeah, 3 or
sites in
4,
Orange
yeah.
County?
There were quite a few.
And I thought that was ludicrous, because, but they could maybe tie in Orange County in 7 years when they locate casinos downstate.
At least the way it was.
Maybe Orange County could be included in that catchment.
Right, and that is my understanding as to why they weren't included, because the New York City area has not been activated yet, and they were suggesting that putting it in Orange County would be causing too much competition with New York City.
No, with Sullivan counties.
Well, Sullivan County
Because
as
no
well,
one would go.
too proximate.
They'd stop at
too
Orange
close.
County and not go up to Sullivan.
That's true too.
And you know who lives in Sullivan? The Speaker of the Assembly has a house,
He has a
a
house.
summer
there.
house,
He
right near
does.
Judith Kay's house.
I didn't know that.
Oh, Monticello, yeah. Well, you got to know these things.
See, I
you know,
have to
you gotta
pay
look
attention
at
to where the
where
speaker
these
lives.
political places, the dimes fall.
All right. Well, that's
follow
an
the money.
interesting. That's
know?
an interesting.
So
aspect.
that's It's interesting. The governor went to Schenectady and went to Sullivan County
Right.
on his victory lap the day after, but he never made it to Seneca County, which is all Republican territory.
Oh dear.
But Monticello and Sullivan County's Democrat, and Schenectady is strong Democrat. But he let Senator Nozzolio and everyone else out in Seneca County just bask in the glow on their own.
Right.
And he didn't, he didn't get there. He said it was weather related, but they were having it at the airport. I mean, it's like, you land at
No,
the
I follow
airport,
you.
you know?
So that caused quite a bit of excitement at the end of 2014.
Sure, yeah.
And again, the spillover effect was at least one major region felt that they were dissed. Yeah, good phrase.
So do you think that now, do you think that your area was dissed again because of hydrofracking not going forward?
What area again? Because I know you said, how many counties
I have
do you
7
cover?
counties.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know,
so-
so you have to
Otsego,
define.
Schoharie,
All right.
you know, so
Yeah,
it
7
goes
counties.
Greene
So-
County.
So
and-
my region, just geographically, again, for your listeners, your viewers, I have parts of the Capital District, Southern Albany County, Mid-Hudson, almost to Kingston, and across the river into Columbia. Then Northern Catskills, Delaware, Greene counties, and Schoharie and Otsego, you know, they call that leather stocking often, and heading into the southern tier. So it's a diverse region. And in that region, I had two casino competitions were running simultaneously that could have affected my district. But
what about
but enough about casinos.
What about hydrofracking?
What about hydrofracking?
I mean, your area was primed in hydrofracking also. I mean, your district, there are places in your district where that would have really helped.
We have, in particular in the southern tier, emotionally, many people in the southern tier were advocating for hydrofracking.
Yeah, but
They
that's
felt-
Tioga County and more west
well,
of your
Broome
district.
County,
Broome, but
County,
that's still-
Shenango County, parts of Delaware, in that
Right.
region.
Just across, you're
Right.
talking about north
Right.
of the
But as-
Pennsylvania border?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly.
as you
That
travel
area.
north,
But in your district, I
Yes.
mean, in Schoharie and Otsego County
Schoharie and
portions,
Otsego,
you had hydrofracking possibilities there.
there were
The Marcellus
discussions
shales.
and Marcellus shales
yeah.
there. I can tell you, as you came further north, that opposition intensified. So I think part of the challenge was that emotionally, the issue boiled down to economic development, an affordable resource, energy resource versus fears of groundwater contamination.
Well, I look.
So that
yeah.
really,
Well, I looked at it this way: the governor's people, the DEC commissioner, the health department commissioner, they said not yet. They didn't say no. They just said not yet.
Really? I thought it was an absolute no, so it's.
Right. Well,
They're still
no
open?
for now. And that's it, because he said the studies aren't there.
Right.
The studies are not complete. The studies have only been the past 2 years, the serious studies. And I'm sure that, you know, some other governor or someone else looking at this 5 years down the road, when the studies are more complete and more thought out and more scientific in terms of the data, I think that, you know, you'll have a better sense. But right now, I mean, I don't see North Dakota being fully contaminated, and North Dakota's doing a lot of, I mean, it's 100% employment in that state.
I can tell you the most thoughtful testimony that I witnessed was during environmental conservation hearings in Albany, where the U.S. Geologic Survey presented their findings. And in terms of engagement, probably one of the most apolitical groups I've ever come across. They're scientists. They really are not concerned
Right.
about politics. They just call them as they see them.
Right.
So in their assertion, they said that New York State had come very far with the regulatory schema. What was being proposed by DEC was far more advanced, far more comprehensive, far more protective than any other state in the nation. But they had 2 caveats. And the first caveat was that they felt there was insufficient mapping of the base of the ground, the underlying geology, so that they could ascertain pre-conditions, you know, pre-fracking condition versus post-fracking condition or in-process condition. And they felt there needed to be more mapping and water quality assessment of the groundwater so they could monitor and detect changes over time if fracking were to occur. The second concern they had was with the well casing, which the concrete and other structures used to bring the fracked fluid and
Right.
the gas up through groundwater areas to the surface. So they had concerns about some of the
Polluting
safety.
the groundwater.
Yeah, they felt that the technology was not quite there. So much in line with what Mark was pointing out, but again, I'm still scratching my head because I think the health commissioner said no, but you're right, in Albany it's no for now.
That's right.
That's just how Albany works.
Well,
So-
I mean, I really think that he said, you know, when he said no that they weren't, the studies weren't too far along enough for their comfort level. Eventually, the studies will be far along enough for their comfort level, and it'll be someone else's comfort level
True.
that that will matter.
It's true.
And there'll be another DEC commissioner, and there'll be another health
Right.
commissioner, and there'll be another
And
governor.
I guess the way I rationalize this,
Eventually.
and this just comes from my background and my engagement in rural areas and working with farms, and
Yeah.
even through the scouting movement, and there's even biblical reference to this. We're stewards, so we have an obligation to feed, clothe, care for our people, but we need to do it in such a way that we don't foul our own nest. We
So-
need to make sure those resources are usable for future generations. So I think that's really the premise here is we need to make sure that whatever technology is engaged, that it's viable, that it's protective of our future, that we're not spoiling our own nest as we engage in using it. And
So are you pro-fracking or anti-fracking?
so, see, I get that one all the time. So,
Well-
so my sense
I
is
didn't-
if it can be done safely, okay.
Right.
If
Well,
it can't
everyone
be done
says that
safely,
also.
and that to me really is the most practical and real answer. In the best of all worlds, I'd love to see us get away from fossil fuels. I'd love to see us work more on renewables.
Well,
I'd like to see us
The
work
fact that gasoline is, let's say, going down so low
temporarily.
it can always skyrocket up.
That's
But
right.
if it's going down so low, is there a need for the Marcellus Shale to be fracked
I understand
here?
that there's a glut in the market right now, and that may also be tied to worldwide commerce as well.
Well, I
if
understand, yeah, but it
Europe
might-
and China are slowing down a little bit. I
It
understand.
might be somewhere down the line
Right.
that there might, like you said, the prices might go up, and
Sure.
there might be more of a need, and
Absolutely.
we should conserve our resources
Right.
until it's really needed. It may
Right.
not be really needed now, and why put everyone in danger? So that's why I say not now.
He's tough, isn't he?
You know?
He just grills you, this guy.
Well, I've been thinking about
Yeah.
this, and
So,
it's just
but
been.
from a practical standpoint, the answer from the health commissioner was he didn't feel it was safe. I think the
Yeah.
governor was in a very tough position because he advocated for it, and then his own base
Mhm.
basically railed at the prospect. So, but practically speaking,
Well, so I always say, stay tuned, we'll
Yeah.
see what happens.
Let me
Yeah.
over
ask
here,
you.
that's
Let
all.
me ask you another quick question.
Yeah,
The
near the
final
end.
minutes is getting back to education for a second. This gap elimination adjustment.
right.
Is that going to go away? Is it going to heal education?
It's going away slowly, and the reason it's going away slowly is that many of the inner city schools and Big Five school districts already have their gap elimination portion taken care of. So as more money is put into the budget, so the gap elimination, again, for your listeners, your viewers, was an artificial mechanism put in place to take money back from schools and use it to balance the budget.
Mm-hmm.
So as it turned out, many of our upstate and rural communities have been hit disproportionately.
Mm-hmm.
And this mechanism intended to balance the budget, no longer needed, has been in place for the last 2 years. And so when state aid comes in, many of the Big Five school districts and the inner cities aren't worried about gap elimination. So money goes to another formula called the foundation aid, which is where all the monies go. And they're less concerned about getting rid of gap elimination because the rocks is not being gored.
But are you going to be
Oh,
advocating
it's
for
top
this?
priority. So to answer your question, top priority. Some of it went away last year. I expect more to go away this year. We'd like it all to go away now. It's still about $2 billion that rural schools and upstate schools are being deprived of. And it makes it very difficult to provide quality education when the aid that you're promised by formula, which everyone agrees with the formula, is now artificially taken back by another formula.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the money's, that's a top priority
And
for
then the schools
education.
don't know how to budget and how to plan to, when you vote on their school budget in
Yeah.
March, I guess, or
Right,
whatever,
right.
so.
So I expect there to be more relief. Rabbi has a burning question. He's been trying to get it out. and
That's all right.
You've been,
No,
Are we
I
out of
just
time
wanted to know,
already?
no, we are out of time, one more minute.
Okay.
But maybe just to conclude, I wanted to
Yes.
know, maybe if you have an issue or a amendment or a bill that's
Right.
close to you that you would like to see, coming up, something
Yeah.
very, maybe you talked about it, right, that's your top priority, but.
well, there are a couple. One, I'll hit two very quickly. One, on the energy side, people were damaged last year by runaway electric prices. And right now, there's no mechanism in place to protect us from that happening again. So I'm going to be advancing some legislation that tries to put some safeguards in place so we don't have this spike in electric prices, which hurts everybody. It was painful. So that's a priority. And then I still have some other issues regionally that I'll be working to advance.
Yeah. Well, your work is cut out ahead of you
It is.
because you have a tough area because it is economically a little bit deprived,
Right.
and it's so far from Columbia to the middle of
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's really an incredible,
But it's joyful work, and I love people, and I'm happy to be
I
engaged in problem
forgot to
solving.
ask you something.
What now?
I'm
He's got
sorry.
something
you're going
else.
to have to come
he's-
again. That's
oh,
all that's
geez.
going to have to happen.
Chris Gibson is going to retire at 2016.
Yes.
Are you going to think about making a
Jeez.
bid for his?
We
This
want
guy
a
is
scoop.
full of-
We're looking
we
for
want
the
a
scoop.
I would tell you that I've been approached, and I'm keeping options open. So it's a possibility.
It's a possibility.
It's a possibility.
All right.
So we'll see.
All right, much success.
Oh, you're
to you.
killing me, you guys. You're killing me.
It's all right.
Thank
We're
you,
doing a
Kim.
good job, and you're doing a great job in
Thank
the
you.
assembly. So keep it up, and we'll get another report card soon enough from you what's happening in the
Thank you.
assembly.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.